Well, first, the former president, Jacob Zuma, is returning to the High Court in Pietermaritzburg later this morning. To remind you, Zuma and the French arms company Thales are accused of corruption, racketeering and money laundering. It's all linked to the years-old arms deal. The former president has also applied for a special plea to have State Prosecutor Advocate Billy Downer removed. He claims that his prosecution is political and that Downer is in fact biased. Let's head down to my colleague Thulasizwe Simelane is there for us, and also we'll be speaking to our reporter Siphamandla Goge and Dasin Tathia later, but we can see Thulas and Siphamandla. Thulasizwe, let me come to you. Earlier on, you would have heard Siphamandla leave the legal technicalities, as he called it, over to you. As I said to Siphamandla earlier, in a court case years ago, we got used to the phrase dolus eventualis. Now we're going to get used to the saying 106 subsection 1 subsection H, aren't we?
And that is a section of the Criminal Procedure Act, Gareth, that brings us here today for a plea, for the arguments in a plea by former President Jacob Zuma's legal team for the lead prosecutor to be recused and to be removed from the case on the grounds that they say that he has, quote-unquote, no title to prosecute, and basically making a series of allegations that center around the suggestion that Billy Downer is so invested in ensuring that former President Jacob Zuma is convicted at all costs. In their plea, they'll be making arguments such as alleging that he has been aware of the political interference that Mr. Zuma says has happened in this case, but has failed to report it or even to act on it as the lead prosecutor. And in that way, he has shown himself to not be impartial and independent, and therefore has no title to prosecute. I'm looking at visuals from inside court there, the passageways that lead to courtroom A at the High Court here in Pietermaritzburg. There's been a bit of movement. I was trying to ascertain who exactly it is that I was seeing a few minutes ago, so I will try and verify that, but the movement of people inside court in those corridors has really started. We know that former President Jacob Zuma uses a different entrance to actually come into that area rather than the general entrance of the public, where we spot him immediately. He is ushered in from one of the streets that is adjacent to the court. I'll update you a bit later on about whom I was seeing arriving here in court. But back to the arguments, Gareth, around this section 106(1)H of the Criminal Procedure Act. I am joined by Siphamandla of the National Prosecuting Authority and Sesetu Magaba, who is an attorney, also joining me for that conversation. Let me start with you, Siphamandla. Former President Jacob Zuma says Billy Downer doesn't have title to prosecute. He has shown himself to be invested in the matter. He wants to convict former President Jacob Zuma at all costs, almost as a personal legacy project is the suggestion, and basically was aware to the interference, political interference, but did nothing, and if anything, actually covered it up. What say ye as the prosecution?
I think we have said it loud and clear before that the defense is clutching at straws. You must remember, Billy has been working on this matter. He's an officer of the court. He has his obligation towards the court and to make sure that he brings all relevant facts to the court. And what he has done up to so far in terms of this case is to be able to put 18 charges against the accused, which the accused must face. And the accused as well cannot say any of those charges have been manufactured. They know that they have to deal with the merits in terms of what we are alleging against them. But also, if you look at the plea that they gave to us, which I must first say that their papers are not in order, they have not given us any supporting documentation, and therefore it's going to be difficult today here, which is going to lead to another delay, which we think that it's by design, not by default, because this is how matters should proceed according to how the defense wants to run the case. But in terms of the prosecutor, we have no doubt that he is a professional, he abides by the National Prosecuting Authority Code, and therefore he's biased in terms of the facts, what has happened, and in terms of the law. And therefore the plea has no basis in fact, and in fact the courts have been on our side with regards to how these issues should proceed.
In fact, you take me straight to the issue of Porritt, that case Porritt and another versus National Director of Public Prosecutions that was heard in the Supreme Court of Appeal. I imagine that you will be placing some significant reliance on that judgment.
There's no doubt that we are going to put case law before the court in terms of when we ultimately reply to these issues. The lawyers are going to deal with that in court, but you know, in terms of precedents and in terms of what has happened before, that there are no basis for what the defense is calling for, that they stand no chance in terms of what they are trying to do. The only thing that we can only suspect is that typical, they want to delay the matter, they don't want to go to the merits of the issues. However, with regards to the legal side of it, we'll be able to challenge that. The law is on our side, the facts with regards to the case are on our side, and therefore we'll be able also to win this round and make sure ultimately that the defendant must answer to the charges.
Before I release you, Siphamandla, I will be asking you about the documents that you say you've not been supplied by Mr. Zuma's team in terms of their papers not being in order. But let me bring in Thulasizwe Magaba. The standard that will be applicable here. When former President Jacob Zuma was applying for the DCJ Raymond Zondo at the State Capture Commission to recuse himself, in typical fashion around judicial officers, the standard we were talking about was reasonable apprehension of bias. He does use the word reasonable apprehension in his arguments in this particular case, but is that necessarily the standard that he needs to satisfy to get Billy Downer removed?
No, it definitely is not. It goes back to the conversation we had a bit earlier, Thulas, that the role which is played by presiding officers is quite different to that role which is played by prosecutors in a matter. So it goes back to the fact that a presiding officer actually makes a decision as to who must be acquitted and who must be convicted. A prosecutor does not. So the standard of apprehension of bias in as far as presiding officers are concerned, it's much easier to prove to get a presiding officer to recuse himself than to get a prosecutor to recuse himself.
But this is not to say that a prosecutor can never be removed, and emphasis being can never. You know, the standard is different and it's a bit more onerous, but it doesn't mean that a prosecutor can never be removed. No, that also comes from that Porritt judgment that we were talking about.
No, it definitely isn't impossible. In fact, if you look at the relevant legislation that we're referring to right now, you've got section 106.4, which talks to a situation where that special plea has been successful. So the law itself understands that that special plea can be successful, and it can happen that you have a prosecutor being removed. It is just really difficult to do so.
Yeah, and I suppose issues of prosecutorial misconduct. I'm keeping an eye on the passages here, the corridors inside court there, Gareth. This is just the corridors just outside courtroom A. As you can see, a lot of movement of people who have started arriving in advance of the arrival of the various legal teams, but also former President Jacob Zuma as well. I did see people from protection services, but I really cannot say definitively you know, whether he has actually arrived or not. We'll keep an eye on that. Let me conclude this conversation with Siphamandla. Siphamandla, you're saying that their papers, former President Jacob Zuma's papers in this plea are not in order, and you're talking about supporting documents that they've not provided you. What are you talking about?
Before I get there, Thulas, you must remember in terms of the plea that they are making, not just about removal. In the end, if the court finds in their favor, they want them to be acquitted on the basis of that. So it means it's the end of the court according to how, of the case according to how they see things. The document that we have been given makes all sorts of allegations, but what we have not been given is annexures and sources and confirmatory affidavit around many of the things that they refer to, third parties that they are talking about. And therefore, you have a document that purports all sorts of conspiracy theories with no supporting documentation, so that we can be able, as the prosecuting authority and the legal team, to be able to respond effectively in terms of what they are pleading for. So those are the papers that we want. Those are the annexures that we need in order for us to be able to be in a position to reply effectively to their plea.
All right, thank you for your time, Siphamandla and Sister Magaba. Appreciate your insights as well. I think it's safe to say, Gareth, that if Siphamandla says it, you can take it to the bank in as far as the position of the National Prosecuting Authority is concerned. I do suspect that he may not want to commit to the legal technicalities with us here now, but I do suspect that you'll be hearing those arguments actually coming out of the mouth of one Billy Downer SC when proceedings do get underway and those arguments are being made. That's the situation in as far as what we expect to happen inside court. But as you can hear in the background, the music is blaring outside court, which is where our colleagues Siphamandla Goge and Desen Tatia are standing by with updates.
Let's head over to Siphamandla Goge now. Thulasizwe, thank you very much. As I'm sure you can see now, there's two very different sides to this particular court case. Thulasizwe and our experts speaking to him about the legal technicalities, what's going to happen inside court. But if you were with us here on eNCA last week, Siphamandla Goge, let me come to you. The other side of this court case is exactly what you were speaking to Cole Niehaus from the MKMVA about a little while ago. It is the support for the former president outside the court. Who is standing on that stage? Who is getting booed? And who is saying what about the former president within the ANC structures? There's a much bigger political story to this as well, isn't there?
Indeed, as those legal technicalities are playing out inside courtroom A, outside, let's call it a political show that will be underway. Let me show you these two gentlemen here that are passing by. This is the former provincial secretary of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. Where is Unqamalala, Baba? Okay, these are some of the leaders of the ANC, or former leaders of the ANC. Super Zuma is the provincial secretary. He is flanked by Tobani Zuma, who's wearing a cream whitish t-shirt, or shirt rather. That is the former deputy chairperson of the ANC in the Moses Mabhida region. That is where we are in Pietermaritzburg. As we take this walk, we want to show you the other side where the stage is set. As we speak, you can see on my right, Joe Komane will show you that it's a proper stage with proper fencing, security fencing, and of course the Presidential Protection Services is manning the stage, ensuring that everything here is in order. We will just take a walk around this stage. Music will try and basically affect our audio here because it's loud, but I'm sure you can still hear us as Joe Komane is showing you that massive stage that has been set for former President Jacob Zuma to address his supporters. We expect the likes of Ace Makashule, the suspended ANC Secretary General, to be here. Cole Niehaus from the MKMVA. We expect the likes of Tony Yengeni, NEC member, to be here. Bongani Bongo, Zandile Kumete, former eThekwini mayor and former regional chairperson of the ANC. On the other side of this stage, you can see here there is ANC regalia and supporters who have come here to support former President Jacob Zuma, whom they regard as the father of a radical economic transformation. So we will take a walk around here, Gareth, just to show you what is happening here as we await the arrival of more supporters of former President Jacob Zuma. But for now, we'll have to go back to the other side of the stage because of loud music, which will drop us. But let's tell you that that is where the former president will be addressing his supporters. This is it. The stage is literally set for former President Jacob Zuma to address his supporters. You can hear those strong songs here. They are playing out, and this is the mood as we expect that more supporters will be coming coming from where my colleague Dasen Dathia is to this park where they will be addressed by former President Jacob Zuma. Let me take it to you, Gareth, so that you can take it to Dasen Dathia.
Siphamandla Goge for the moment. It's quite an upgrade, isn't it, from last week's stage, where it was a simple trailer, yet we saw many members of the ANC. Siphamandla, let me stay with you. I'll tell you why. We don't have Dasen Dathia with us yet near Freedom Park. I'm sure we'll get him up and joining us soon. Let me speak to you, for viewers who missed what Carl Niehaus said earlier. You were very quick off the draw, weren't you, asking about the criticism levelled against him, as well as Tony Ngeni and a few others, and their utterances, I think is the word you used, last week on that much smaller stage when we heard from the former president after last week's trial proceedings. Just remind us what Carl Niehaus had said. It seemed to me he was not in any way going to apologize for his support.
Well, basically, before I answer that question, let me ask my colleague Joe Komane to come with me so that we walk towards the main street so that we get more supporters and leaders of ANC coming here to support the former president. But Carl Niehaus last week was adamant that these charges are politically motivated. Him saying they will continue to support the former president, calling on all ANC members to come out and support the former president, arguing that those who are criticizing them of supporting the former president are basically being mischievous, taking a swipe at some of the ANC leaders for criticizing former President Jacob Zuma's supporters, using the stage and the platform to criticize the other faction of the ANC. Remember, the ANC is still grappling with the issue of factionalism. So Carl Niehaus and those who are part of the radical economic transformation forces or grouping was very clear that they will continue to support the former president. But yesterday, the National Working Committee of the ANC issuing a statement that there is a possibility that Carl Niehaus, Tony Ngeni, who's the NEC member of the ANC, as well as Ace Magashule, the suspended Secretary General of the ANC, could be or might be charged for those utterances and their continued defiance in terms of addressing ANC supporters here. So Carl Niehaus saying he fears nothing, he will not be charged because he has not committed any crime, and we expect that will be the same line that Ace Magashule and Tony Ngeni will take. I see there is someone inside this car. I'm trying to spot who will come out of this car. For now, I can't see properly, but of course, these are some of the leaders and members of the ANC who continue to come to the Pietermaritzburg High Court to support the former president. So Carl Niehaus was clear that he has done nothing wrong and he doesn't fear being disciplined.
Well, Siphamandla Goge, I'm going to ask you to keep an eye on whoever steps out of vehicles for now. Thulasizwe Simelane, I'm going to come to you in a moment. I want to talk about the first witness for the state, Patricia de Lille, and what she spoke about last week. Before we come to you, let's stay with the supporters side of this. A little while ago, Edward Zuma, speaking to Siphamandla Goge, insisting that the charges against his father are politically motivated. It's a line he has held from the beginning. The former president's son saying they're ready for trial. In fact, his father saying he has nothing to worry about because he isn't guilty. Here's what Edward Zuma had to say.
We've always maintained that this is a conspiracy and it's bigger than we think and it's got foreign agents in it. So we know these are just summed up charges which ultimately will be transferred.
Today he will have an opportunity to plead. He has pleaded not guilty in a court of public opinion, so we expect that inside court he will plead not guilty too. But how is he feeling? Have you seen him? How is he doing?
No, he's okay. If you're an innocent person, you need not to stress with anything. He will definitely plead not guilty because he's not guilty. So we're expecting the court process to proceed. We've been saying for years that we are ready. If they want us to start the trial, we'll start it today.
So that was Edward Zuma speaking to Siphamandla Goge later. You'll see top of your screen, Thulasizwe Simelane. Let me come back to you. I know that you're on corridor watch While Siphamandla is watching for cars, we're waiting to see the former president arrive. But someone else, of course, we're going to keep an eye on is that of the very first witness for the state, Patricia de Lille, aren't we? We heard from her last week in this two-decade journey as one of the original arms deal whistleblowers. I think everyone very keen to hear from her as the first witness.
Gareth, I have to wonder if Patricia de Lille will actually come back and be ready and on standby as she was last week. And the reason I sort of have to say I wonder is because, you know, today, even the NPA accepts that today will be taken up by the technical arguments on this plea that former President Jacob Zuma has advanced for the recusal and the removal of Billy Downer as lead prosecutor, but also saying that if he's successful in that plea and Billy Downer is removed on the basis that he has no title to prosecute, a technical term that basically says he has no standing to be prosecuting former President Jacob Zuma, saying that if that's the case, actually he should be entitled to a full acquittal. The matter needs to proceed no further and he should be acquitted. Given those technicalities, I wonder if the NPA will bring the witness to be here. Remember, they do incur costs every time there's a postponement of the matter, in that they have to arrange for everyone that needs to be here. They have to arrange for the witness to be here and to be accommodated and to be ready and on standby for her to take the stand. But you're absolutely right. That's the first witness that the NPA has lined up when the actual trial gets underway. But I seriously doubt if that will happen anytime today, given that, you know, there's going to be this argument, and after that the Judge Piet Koen will then need to make a decision and make a ruling on that plea. And I do suspect that you know, the judge will want to take his time to consider all the arguments, and also do expect that the arguments will be a bit more technical, as you heard a few minutes ago from Sipho Ngwema of the NPA, saying that part of what they will be saying is that actually the papers filed in support of this plea by former President Jacob Zuma's legal team are not in order, in that they don't have supporting affidavits. He makes a litany of allegations, but without supporting affidavits, and therefore do expect that that there will be a bit of argument along those lines. And that, for me, pushes back the moment where we hear the first witness testifying in this matter. But importantly, Gareth, let me bring this in. From what I understand from the legal experts we've been talking to, if former President Jacob Zuma is not successful in his application here today, the chances of it leading to a pause in the actual trial process are slim, in that they are saying that this is these are interlocutory processes, in that the preference of the courts is that actually if he's aggrieved by whatever Judge Piet Koen rules here today, the preference of the courts is that actually he should only appeal that at the end state, when he's appealing, if he's appealing the outcome of this case, then he can lump that together with an appeal on this question of law that is to be decided here. Certainly that's what the legal experts are saying, that it would need to be parked, the proceedings would need to go ahead in as far as the trial is concerned.
The voice of reason outside courtroom 1A is our Thulasizwe Simelane. Everybody wants to hear from Patricia de Lille, but Thulasizwe, quite right that with all these legal technicalities they're going to have to deal with today, it might not be a case of us seeing Patricia de Lille. For the moment, Thulasizwe Simelane, thank you very much. I know he's on corridor watch. We're all awaiting the former president's arrival at that court. Also, Siphamandla Goge, you can see him almost a head on a bobble, keeping an eye on who's getting out of those cars as we get closer to the trial getting underway later this morning.